So, good morning. Hello, everyone. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Dafa Imanda Patria, a med school student from the University of Palangkaraya with the student ID number of 24303080100005. Today, I'm going to be explaining in general and not in great detail the anatomy and musculoskeletal parts of the human's lower extremities to fulfill my assignment by Dr. Oski. Before we dive in, I would like to extend my gratitude and to exclaim how honored I am for having Dr. Oski Iliandra, Master of Public Health, to be here reviewing this video. Truly, your work has inspired me to go to great lengths to study about the human anatomy to become a better doctor in the future. And your esteemed and remarkable work wholeheartedly inspires us all. So before we dive in, I would like to clarify that the first of the two parts that we're going to explain will be the skeletal structure. Since between the muscles and the skeleton is more distinctively different of the two. So the first muscle that we will be examining over here are this structure over here near the coccyx called the hip bones. So the hip bones are composed of three different bones with variable sizes. The most superiorly located and the largest of the three hip bones is called the ilium. So the os ilium or the ilium bone is the most superior component of a hip bone. And under the ilium we have the ischium right over here. So the ischium composed of a body and two rami that supports the pelvis when sitting. Superiorly, it fuses with the ilium and the superior pubic ramus and contributes to forming the acetabulum. From the inferior aspect of the ischial body, the ramus of the ischium extends anteromedially and joins the inferior pubic ramus to form a bar of bone called the ischiopubic ramus. And over here, from the last of the three hip bones, we have the smallest component, which is the pubic bone, right over here. So the hip bone, being the smallest of the three, is composed of a body, a superior ramus, and an inferior ramus. So we can see over here joining the os ilium and the sacrum right over here. We have the sacroiliac joints, or also known as the articulatio sacroiliac. Well, joints that can join the femur and the coccyx over here between the femur and the coccyx is called the articulatio coccyx. Over here we have the os sacrum, which we already talked about previously. It represents 5 fused vertebrae at the base of the spine within the pelvis. A cool fact to know is that although the sacrum is typically composed of 5 segments labeled S1 to S5, it can range from 4 to 6 segments, and these vertebrae fuse during adolescence into one immobile bone below the sacrum. We have the coccyx, the coccyx over here, also known as the tailbone. It represents 4 fused or semi-fused vertebrae and the terminal end of the spine within the pelvis, same as the sacrum. It is also typically composed of 4 segments labeled CO1 to CO4, which fuses during adolescence, but it can also range from 3 to 5 depending on the individual's development. So, when we go below the hip bones, we have the femur. So, the femur or the thigh bone is the most proximal bone of the lower limb. articulating approximately with the acetabulum of the os coxae to form the hip joint, and distally with the patella and the proximal tibia to form the knee joints. Under the femur, we have the patella. This small circular thing over here is called the patella, also known as the kneecap, which articulates only with the patellar surface of the left distal femur at the patellar notch. It is the largest sesamoid bones in the body and connects to the femur via the tendon of the quadriceps femoris, which we will get into that later. And under the patella, we have this large bone over here called the tibia or the shin bone. This bone over here and its counterpart, the fibula, the one here at the back, helps form the shin of the foot. The fibula is the smaller of the two and located posterior to the tibia. It articulates proximately with the distal femur and laterally with the fibula, and on its distal part it articulates with the talus, while the fibular articulates proximately and distally with the tibia and talus respectively. A rather interesting fact to know is that the fibula does not articulate with the femur and bears very little body weight. It serves primarily as the site for muscle attachments. So, we went down to the most bottom part of the lower extremities. We will find ourselves a bunch of these small interconnected bones that form the pes, or what we like to call the foot. Over here we have the articulatio talocruralis. You can see it a little over here, which connects the crural regions with the talus. So there's a lot of small bones that made up of the os pedis or the foot bones. The one over here is called the calcaneus, and then there are also the malleolus bones, which is located here. It's supposed to be located right over here, near the calcaneus tendon or the Achilles heel. We have the talus bones, the navicular bones, we have the cuboidium bones, and also three cuneiform bones. The we have here the medial cuneiform, the intermediate one, and the lateral cuneiform. These long bones over here is called the metatarsals, while this small thing that forms the toes of our foot are the phalanx. You can see that this phalanx be divided into three sections: the distal, the medial, and the proximal part of the phalanx. Now, since we already discussed in general most of the important bones that we have in the lower extremities, we will now start to discuss the muscles alongside its origins and insertions and functions. The innervations I would like to skip because it's going to make the video too long and tacky to make. I might move them at the very end of the video, I don't know, to explain them more easily to you guys. So for the muscles here, there are the it's loading. Here it is. So the first muscles I would like to discuss with you guys is the the gluteus muscle, which is located posterior to the human body. So, the gluteal muscles consist of the gluteus maximus, the gluteus medius, and also the gluteus minimus, which is located somewhere where it's very small. It's the smallest of the three. So the gluteal muscles helps extension of the hip joints and helps lateral rotation. The gluteal medius does abduction of the hips. And the final one is the gluteus minimus. It also does the abduction of the hips. The next muscles I would like to discuss is called the iliopsoas muscles. It's made up of three different muscles actually. The iliacus muscle, the psoas major, and the psoas minor. But an interesting note to know is that the psoas minor doesn't always appear on every people since every person have different number of muscles in their body with varying size and numbers. So in this coxal region, the iliopsoas muscles is the prime mover of hip flexion and is the strongest hip flexor. Other hip flexors are of course the flexors, the rectus femoris, sartorius is one of here, and the tensor fasciae lata. The psoas major contribute to flexion at the hip alongside the iliacus muscle. The origin of these two, the iliopsoas muscle, is the 12th thoracic and 5th lumbar for the psoas, and upper two-thirds of the iliac fossa for the iliac muscle. The psoas major insertion is located near the labia medial linea aspera, while the insertion of the iliaca muscle is located at the trochanter minor. Both functions as flexor of the hip, and both muscles synergize for action. There's also a third, more obscure part, like I mentioned before, the psoas minor, which is sometimes absent, and if it does present itself in our probandis right here, it's going to originate from the 12 fasces lateralis corpus of the vertebrae thorax and the first lumbalic. Its insertion is at the fascia of the musculus iliopsoas and the arcus iliopectinus. Alright, the next muscle that we're going to discuss is the sartorius muscle, which is the longest muscle in the human body, which runs from the hip to the knee joint. It has three primary functions. It flexes the muscles at the hips and does flexion at the knees and helps lateral rotation. It originates from the spina iliaca anterior superior, and its insertion is located in the pes anserinus superficialis. The next muscle we have is the tensor fasciae lata. Wait, give me a second to find it. The tensor fasciae lata. It's actually located here, right near the iliotibial tract. So the fascia lata, which is quite interesting, is located in the proximal anterolateral tie between the superficial deep fibers of the iliotibial tract and has three primary functions. It flexes the hip and does medial rotation, and it tenses the iliotibial tract. It originates in the same area as the sartorius, and its insertion is located at the iliotibialis tract, below the condylus lateralis. The next group of muscles we have here is called the quadriceps femoral muscles. So the quadriceps femoral muscles like its name suggests, is made up of a quadrant of muscle. It's made up of four muscles. The rectus femoris does flexion of the whole leg at the hip joint and also extension at the knee. The two side muscles in the medial section is called the vastus medialis, and at the side there is the vastus lateralis. They're both functions to extend the knees. The vastus intermedialis is located deep within the knee, and it serves the same function as the other vastus muscles. Its origins, all of these, the origins are the rectum of the spina iliaca anterior inferior, and also the labiomedial linea aspera. The vastus lateralis is originated from the trochanter major, while the vastus intermedialis is the fasces anterior humor. Its insertion, all of these they insert at the patella region right here. So let's see if we can find the vastus intermedialis muscle. Over here. It's located deep within the knee. I mean the thigh. Okay, so the next muscles are the piriformis muscles. They're very small. It's located underneath the lateral rotator muscles. So the piriformis, I'm gonna explain in brief. We have the piriformis is located and originated in the pelvic fasces of the os sacrum. Its insertion is at the top of the trochanter major. It's very hard to locate these small muscles here. And then we have the superior gemellus, originates from the spina ischiatica, and it inserts into the tendon of the obturatorius internus muscle. We have the obturator internus, which originates from the lateral part of the foramen of the obturatum near the medial membrane of the obturatoria. Its insertion is at the top of the trochanter major. We have the inferior gemellus, which originates from the tuber ischiaticum and inserts in the tendon of the obturatorius internus muscles. We also have the quadratus femoris muscle, who's originated in the tuber ischiaticum and inserts in the crista of the interconthoracica. All of these that I just discussed are lateral rotators, so they help rotate the knee to the sides. Okay, so the next big muscles that we can take a look over here, located behind here, are the hamstring muscles. So the hamstring muscles is made up of three different muscles. The first one we have the bicep femoris. It's used for extension of the hip joint and flexion of the knee. We have the semitendinosus muscle right here at the middle, and beside it we have the semimembranosus muscle. So there are muscles called the adductor muscles used to adducting the hips. So these muscles, we have the magnus, adductor magnus. It originates from the ramus inferior of the os pubis, ramus os ischi, and the dorsal part. It originates in the tuber ischiaticum, and its insertion is to the proximal medial linea aspera, the epicondylus of the media femur, the septum intermuscular, and the vas adductorum. There's also the adductor brevis, which adducts the hip. It originates in the ramus inferior of the os pubis, and it inserts in 1/3 of the proximal labium medial linea aspera. There's the adductor longus, which adducts the hips. It originates from the pubic to the sympiphysis. It inserts in 1/3 of the labium medial linea aspera. There's the pectaneous muscles. We can kind of see it over here. I swear. Yes, the pectaneous muscle, which abducts and flex the hip. It originates in the pectus of the ossus pubis and inserts in the trochanter minor and pectinia of the femur. And the last of the adductor muscle is we have the gracilis, which is used for the abduction of the hip and flexion of the knee, and it also helps with medial rotation. It originates in the corpus os pubis and the ramus inferior of the os pubis. And the last one is the last of its insertion is the pes anserinus superficialis. It inserts down here. So let's remove some of these muscles to find the ones that we've been talking about. Here we have the adductor longus, adductor brevis, the pectineus. These are the iliopsoas muscles at the back with the adductor magnus, as well as the gracilis that we've been talking about, located right over here. All five of them are used for adduction of the hip. So an interesting note is called the SGT muscles. They all attach the pes anserinus, located like around here. When we move downwards to the anterior aspect, we have the anterior tibialis muscle. It does dorsiflexion and inversion of the ankle. The extensor digitorum longus extends the digits and everything else the tibialis anterior does. It does dorsiflexion and pronation, and it originates in the fascies lateralis tibia fascia cruris and inserts in the metatarsal bones and the os cuneiform medial bones that we discussed earlier. So, back over here, we have the fibularis brevis, the counterpart. Wait, let's discuss the fibularis longus first, since we find it first. So the fibularis brevis and longus, they do eversion of the ankle. The longus originates from the caput fibulate, 2/3 proximal fibula fasciae crucis, and it inserts in the tuberosity of the metatarsal bone, the first of the os cuneiform medial. It inserts there. Let's see if we can find brevis. I'll be deleting some of these so they can find them more easily. Some of these bones are very deeply located. But before we do that, I will just explain that the brevis, the fibularis brevis, originates in 2/3 of the distal fibula, and it inserts in the tuberosity of the metatarsal bones. So, if we go posteriorly, we have the two gastrocnemius muscles. It has two heads, the lateral and the medial. The lateral head is called the plantation, well, which helps flexion at the knee and does plantar flexion. The one underneath all this, where is it? We can find it. I swear, it's just right here somewhere. We have the soleus. So the soleus helps with plantar flexion, the same thing that the other muscles do. So all of this form the tricepsurae. The two gastrocnemius and the soleus muscle form the tricepsurae muscles. The origin of the soleus is at the caput medial of the condylus medialis femur, the caput lateral condylus lateralis femur, and also the soleus muscle is located in the 1/3 of the proximal fibula, the fascies posterior tibia, and its insertion is at the tuber calcaneae, right down here, right around here, the tuber calcaneae, near the calcaneal bones. So what we have over here is called the calcaneal tendon, or also known as the Achilles heel, the Achilles tendon, Achilles ligament, no matter how much you want to say it. We also have right above here, I forgot to mention, this area right here, the popliteus. So there's supposed to be a joint here. The popliteus helps flexion of the knee and it helps unlock the joints. The, the origin of it is the condylus lateralis femur, the corpus posterius meniscus lateralis, and inserts at the fasces posterior tibia, lateral to the linea muscle soli. There's also the flexor hallucis muscle, the flexor hallucis longus. There, the flexor hallucis longus flexes the toe. It originates in the distal fasces of the posterior fibula, and it inserts in the phalanx distal, the first finger of the phalanx distal toe. There's also the tibialis posterior, where was it? Let me try to find it. The posterior tibial muscles. It helps plantar flexion and inversion of the ankle. No, not this one. The tibialis posterior. It helps plantar flexion and inversion of the ankle. It originates from the tibia fibula, the membranes, and then it inserts in the tuberosity of the navicularis bones, the plantar aspect of all three cuneiformic bones, and the metatarsal bones of finger 2 to 4. There's also the flexor digitorum longus. The flexor digitorum longus. There. Which flexes the digits or the toes and does inversion of the ankle and also plantar flexion. It originates from the fasces posterior tibia and it inserts in the phalanx, the distal part of finger 2 to 5. Since it seems like I've already explained most of the major muscles, at least the ones in the surface, as well as their skeletal structure, the origins, insertion, and functions, I would like to end the video and I would like to extend my gratitude to those who's watching and to Dr. Oski Iliandra, Master of Public Health, especially for grading my video. I extend my greatest gratitude. 1,000 thanks for those who want to watch this video. And look at look at me explaining about muscles and bones, which clearly I'm not a master of. I'm gonna end this video right here, and thank you very much for watching. I forgot to explain the innervations of the lower extremities. So as you can see here from the front view, the anterior view of the lower extremity, we have the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh, the obturator nerve, the lumbosacral trunk, the pudendal femoral nerve, the obturator nerve, which comes out of the foramen over here, and then we have the infrapatellar branch of the saphenous nerve. We have the saphenous nerve, the common peroneal nerve, the deep peroneal nerve, the superficial peroneal nerve, the lateral compartment of the leg, which is divided into two, the peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis, or the long and short peroneus. We have the anterior tibialis, the extensor hallucis longus, the extensor digitorum longus, and the peroneus tertius. All four of these are a part of the anterior compartment of the leg. On the distal branch of the saphenous nerve, we also have innervations, and we have the sural nerve. For the back view or the posterior view, we have the posterior cutaneous nerve of the eye. We have the sciatic nerve, the tibial nerve, the common peroneal nerve, and the sural nerve as well. We also have the tibial nerve over here. If you want to see a different image, I have one right here. See? The lateral cutaneous nerve, femoral nerve, arterial nerve, saphenous nerve, all the same. Alright, now that's all for the innervations. Thank you very much for listening and see you next time.